one in which you're in the ground, and the second death is in the mind. Lack of understanding, lack of knowledge. So as there are two deaths, there are two types of birth. One from one's mother, and the second of knowledge, the bread of knowledge. Which is why Jesus said, it is written in the book of Hosea, he said there's a famine. There's a famine of the word. Everyone is eating, and eating a lot. In fact, overeating and suffering from obesity, as it is, particularly in the Western world. So there is not a lack of physical food, but there is a lack of spiritual food. There is a famine because we've not understood the theory of give us this day our daily bread. Again, most recited over a plate of physical food all the time. But this is not what Jesus was talking about. He was giving you insight in how to study the Bible and the Quran. Daily, the food of heaven is how the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is referred to within the Quran. And so it is 12 months of fruit-bearing trees, which will be the healing of the nations. Right now, there are over 10,000 religions on the planet. Why is that? Because of the lack of knowledge, the lack of bread knowledge, no understanding scripturally. So when you lack the understanding, then you're relying on conjecture and cannot prove what you're talking about, just conjecture, the ability to talk well and convince others. And so there are 10,000 religions, because just as in the Towers of Babel, one language at one time, but in the course of construction, arrogance, pride, envy, all those characters came into play. And what did the Creator do? Dismantled the Towers of Babel and caused what? Confusion of tongue. Confusion. And when there's confusion of tongue, it's left to individuals conjecturing about what is the will of the Most High. And so this is why you have over 10,000 religions, whereas in the beginning there was one understanding of the will of the Most High. And we see the events of Pentecost, rushing wind from heaven, devout men assembled at Jerusalem, speaking different languages. But some heard them talking and said, they're speaking Galilean. And so what is Galilean? Galilean is where Jesus gave his mathematical dissertation, 7 loaves of bread, feeding 4,000. And this is where he taught his disciples how to pray. Give us this day our daily bread. Mathematics and numbers. And it's through mathematics and numbers that I prove and come to the point of proving this most critical sign called the cross. In the book of 1 Corinthians, 1st chapter and the 17th verse, it reads, it says, "For Christ sent me not to baptize, but to preach the gospel, not with wisdom of words, lest the cross of Christ should be of no effect." So the cross of Christ cannot be explained with wisdom of words. If you ask your preacher or your reverend, explain to me the cross, and if he begins to use words, he has failed the test. You cannot talk about the cross with words, lest the cross will be of no effect. So the question is, well, how do we discuss the cross, if not with words? And this is very essential. the cross. And I'll continue to read 1 Corinthians 1 chapter, 18th verse. For the preaching of the cross is to them that perish foolishness, but unto us who are saved it is the power of God. So there's power in the cross. And there are those who have received immense power from the cross. And I refer to the pale fox civilization. The Europeans, when they have transformed the cross at the point of the invasion of Rome to Jerusalem in 70 AD and the destruction of the Temple Mount, the spiritual balance of power shifted from Jerusalem to Rome. And it's through Rome that we see the transformation of the images, the African family being transformed into European images. And then this white image being placed upon the cross. This has extraordinary power, the power of the cross. And they have used the image of the European on the cross to take it all over the planet and have wielded much authority and power to seize land, gold, minerals, and the minds of the people based on this false image. The power of the cross, and it has served the Europeans well, the pale fox civilization well. They have transformed the story from what was essentially a black Hebrew Israelite persecution at the hands of Romans and other African Hebrew collaborators, and they transformed the story into whites being persecuted at Jerusalem, an African country, and a white man being placed on the cross. And we have accepted and believed it. And as a result, the European has wielded much spiritual power throughout the world because of this image, which is absolutely false. So, the preaching of the cross, how do you explain it, if not with words? Well, the key is through numbers. It is through numbers that one is able to explain the cross. I refer to the book of Ezekiel. It begins the first chapter, Ezekiel 1. The power of the cross. It cannot be explained with words, at least it'll be of no effect. And so if not with words, it's through numbers, as I will demonstrate. In Ezekiel 1st chapter and the first verse, and it begins, Now it came to pass, in the 30th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river of Kaibar, that the heavens were open, and I saw visions of God. Now, there's a month, a time given. Again, it's essential that we understand how the calendar is telling us something. The 4th month and the 5th day. If we view it from the Gregorian perspective, the Gregorian calendar, the present calendar system that we're in use throughout the world today, this would be April the 5th. Okay, now listen carefully, because it's going to be explained to you the significance of that date. And I refer to you in Ezekiel the 1st chapter and the 10th verse. The 4 living creatures I described. As for the likeness of their faces, they 4 had the face of a man and the face of a lion on the right side, and they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, and they 4 also had the face of an eagle. Now, the 4 living creatures in biblical context, spoken of in the book of Ezekiel and spoken of in the books of Revelation. The 4 living creatures.